My name is William Davidson, and I was one of the defense attorneys in the James Legate murder trial. My co-counsel was Bill Burchelman, and Bill Burchelman is deceased. Unfortunately, he died of cancer. I do not believe James Legate got a fair trial. I believe James Legate would not have been found guilty had all the evidence been presented to the jury.
My name's Juanita Vasquez-Gardner. I was one of the prosecutors in the case against James Legate.
My name is Joey Contreras, and I assisted Mr. Vasquez-Gardner in prosecuting this case. I remember being eager to sit on this case because it was a very interesting case. You don't have many murder cases, where the person who's murdered is prominent. It was seen more rather than a murder, as an assassination of a prominent businessman, and that just doesn't happen all the time.
We, as prosecutors, we have to concentrate on the evidence, on what's there in front of us, and not on speculation, and that's what we did, and that's what resulted in Mr. Legate's conviction.
I'm Sergeant Ken Albrecht. In 1998, I was assigned to the homicide unit and was the lead homicide investigator in the Eddie Garcia murder. It was a very interesting case to work as a detective. The challenge at the time was removing James Legate's claim to be a witness and connecting to the crime in his true role as the shooter. And we were able to do that very effectively.
There are whodunits and difficult cases, and Juanita and I have worked plenty of those. This is not one of them. This is one of the easiest murders I've probably worked on, and I've worked on a bunch of them. The evidence was overwhelming. It was a pretty strong case.
James Legate, at the time, was a person who repossessed cars. James Legate was in the area of the Players Bar in Eddie Garcia's office because he was trying to repossess a car belonging to Marilyn Maddox. He knew Marilyn Maddox had worked for a home health care agency, but he didn't know whose home health care agency. That day he had gone to Players, and while he was in the bar, he started thinking about the home health care, which was next door. And he started thinking about going over there to inquire about whether Marilyn Maddox had ever worked there.
James Legate in 1998 was a small lot car salesman. Several hours before the shooting, there was a bar next door to Mr. Garcia's office that was open during the day, and James Legate was observed by several witnesses being in that bar for several hours, sitting by the window, looking out one of the windows out towards the front porch area, where he would have had the opportunity to see the comings and goings of the bar and the office next door.
Well, he arrived at Players, and he stood out because he was there before people normally go to bars and start drinking. He got there early, and he drank for hours. He made quite an impression as the sole patron of this bar on the barmaid. She remembered him distinctly, and the way he would keep getting up to look out the window and acting in a nervous fashion.
During this time, he has a white shirt on. He spills some red taco sauce on the white shirt and wipes it off. Witnesses see this, so they know he has a white shirt on.
After being at the bar for several hours, he gets up and he leaves.
He went over to Eddie Garcia's office. He says that a man waved him in. Now, he didn't know the man was Eddie Garcia. James says he shook hands with Eddie Garcia. They began to talk, and right away, Eddie Garcia grabbed the table and pulled it up real fast.
People in the bar report hearing gunshots.
Shots rang out. James says he caught a glimpse of somebody else, which he sketched, and he just got scared and he ran.
Several witnesses see Mr. Legate fleeing from the office next door. He's seen fleeing on foot.
Mr. Legate is seen running from the crime scene. He all but shouted out, I'm here, watch me. Everyone get a good look at me. And he drew so much attention to himself.
There were numerous witnesses inside Players, and many of them gave different accounts. One account was a man in a dark shirt ran out of Eddie's office and ran around the corner. Another account said a man in a white shirt ran around the corner. People inside the bar, they confirmed that James had a white shirt on.
So I do remember that there were witnesses and that there were some inconsistencies in what the clothing that the person who was running by was wearing. Oftentimes, there are inconsistencies in what witnesses say somebody is wearing. In fact, they can be totally opposite, black and white.
Bottom line was that we had multiple witnesses who positively identified Mr. Legate as the person seen fleeing the shooting.
He tells me he was scared, and of course I think anybody would be scared if they're in an area and somebody's right in there shooting a gun and you don't know what's going on. I mean, he drops his portfolio, things fall out, and he runs. I think there was a rush to judgment on the part of the police simply because James Legate was there, he did have a record, and he was the easiest person to pin this on. And because a photocopy of his identification was found in the office, not the real driver's license, but a photocopy. Because the photocopy was found, they assumed that James Legate must have killed Eddie Garcia.
So what he had done was, this was our hypothesis, was that he had run and then gotten rid of the briefcase and the weapon. The weapon was tied in some black tape or some tape of sorts, and they had been discarded in the same general area. As I recall, it was a fenced off area, and it was en route to where he had been running.
We've relocated now to an area right down the street at 5627 Culebra. We were advised that an officer had located a briefcase or a satchel, black in color, that apparently had been carried by the actor as he left the location. I'm standing in front of where the satchel and subsequently the weapon was recovered.
The murder weapon was found about a block or two away from the murder scene along Culebra Road, coming towards town from the murder scene. It was found in a small fenced area that was connected with an apartment complex there. It was found with a briefcase, a black nylon briefcase that matched the description of a briefcase that Mr. Legate was known to carry in his normal business opportunities, and also a briefcase that was described by the people that seen him with it in the bar. James Legate was arrested within the hour of the murder. I want to say around the 30-minute mark, but definitely within the hour.
I think the police did excellent work in investigating the case the first 24 hours. But the problem is the investigation abruptly stopped. As soon as James Legate was arrested, the head detective, Kenneth Elbrecht, told the jury, told myself, that everything stopped. Nobody investigated anything else. They didn't investigate the picture James Legate drew. They didn't investigate anything else that ever came in that pointed to anybody else. And so in that respect, I would have to say after those 24 hours, it wasn't sloppy police work, it was no police work. Their job was done. Now it was the DA's job to hammer this thing in and make sure it was James Legate that was convicted.
When you were researching this project, tell me something about the research and what it entailed.
A lot of the research was kind of done in phases. The first part was getting acquainted With the case, which entailed just going over and reading volumes of trial transcripts, there was also, obviously making contact with a lot of the folks who were involved in the case, and then physically going to the scene. I still remember the day that we all went out there and how important that was for us to just kind of get some perspective. All of those things kind of helped us get a better understanding prior to even starting the investigation of what we were looking at.
I thought this would have been at the back of the complex, far removed.
This case also had a lot of moving parts, a lot of people in it. Did you ever feel overwhelmed? What were some of the things, the challenges of so much information and just so many people involved in this?
It is a very complicated case, and a lot of the moving parts are outside of the courtroom and were sort of in play, both before the shooting happened and then long after the shooting happened.
You spoke with attorneys on both sides of the case. What are these attorneys doing now?
There were 3 attorneys that participated in this project. William Davidson, a defense attorney for Mr. Legate, and the 2 prosecutors, Joey Contreras and Juanita Vasquez Gardner. William Davidson is still working as a defense attorney here in town. He has his own practice located off of Broadway. Joey Contreras, at the time of filming, was a district court judge. He is now a defense attorney here in town, and Juanita Vasquez Gardner is still working at the district attorney's office.
And she's actually one of the top folks within Joe Gonzalez's administration.
Can you tell us about how you obtained some of the archive footage that was seen in episode 2 and any challenges putting it together with footage from this, this era?
So there were 2 types of old footage that viewers saw in throughout, sprinkled throughout all of the episodes. The first was KSAT archive video. Then viewers also saw the actual crime scene video taken just moments after the shooting of Eddie Garcia. That is something that media rarely gets their hands on, and fortunately we were able to get that initially given to us by the Legate family, and then we subsequently requested a copy.
Was there any challenge putting it together with footage from this era or anything like that?
Yeah, well, if you go back to the scene, it doesn't look incredibly different. The building's been remodeled, but it's still essentially laid out the same way it was back in 1998. That auto zone is still there, that empty field is still there. The little iron rot area where they found the murder weapon, where they found the gun, is still there. It looks different now. Back then it was maroon, today it's black. So that was actually kind of cool for us to be able to compare then and now what the crime scene looked like, what different areas of that intersection, Culebra and Callahan, looked like. So I wouldn't say it was necessarily a challenge, but just something that was unique to this story. A lot of times you'll go to a murder scene and it doesn't even exist anymore. And in this case, it kind of did, kind of didn't. It just looked different.